Hello everyone, I'm David Vaucher. Welcome to Return on Racing. Return on Racing is powered by Vaucher Analytics, which helps race teams and drivers drive efficiencies off track so they can fuel success on track. Return on Racing is also brought to you by the Motorsport Sponsorship Accelerator, the most cutting-edge resource out there to learn how to find, maintain, and grow long-term sponsorship relationships. If you're interested in finding out more, please visit the Vaucher Analytics website at www.vaucheranalytics.com and use the navigation links at the top right hand of your screen. Okay, so today we are in the second part of what I think is going to turn out to be a pretty epic four-part series. And that word epic is going to come up a lot. So I think it's very appropriate for this introduction into the second part. Now, the first part was called Racing's Second Revolution, why motorsport racing teams must move beyond sponsorship. That's right, never let it be said that we're afraid to tackle the large and, again, epic topics here on Return on Racing. So with that, let's just get right into it. There are a few things I remember more vividly about growing up in Texas in the 1990s than watching NFL football on Sundays with my dad, or at the very least, hearing the day's games on TV while I was off doing other things. Football is intertwined with life in that state, and indeed the entire US, and my dad, an eager immigrant from Europe, took to it immediately. And I'd be lying if I said the constant exposure to American culture via football didn't shape part of who I am today. Now, in 2025, I'm back in France, where motorsport takes up most of my leisure time. But those early memories came flooding back recently when my wife and I watched an 8-part Netflix documentary about the legendary Dallas Cowboys of the mid-1990s. Granted, I have a personal connection to that team and era, but even a non-fan would be hooked by the opening minutes. My wife certainly was. They were dynamic, cinematic, and set to music that evoked the most epic Western movies. And sure enough, when the credits rolled, there it was, NFL Films. Depending on where you grew up or live, this may mean nothing to you, but to me, it is intensely evocative. I speak about their work with a deep familiarity that I take for granted. But outside of the US, NFL films are largely unknown. Yet this division of the NFL holds the key for motorsport to unlock enormous value today and far into the future. So what exactly is NFL Films? And why is it potentially so important to motorsport? In part one of this 4-part series on building the next motorsport business model and paradigm, I explained why today's motorsport teams are stuck in a fragile sponsorship model, while other sports, the National Football League included, have proven you can build cultural capital through storytelling and influence. That first part will be linked in the show notes. This second part dives deeper: why storytelling is foundational to moving away from sponsorship as a primary revenue driver, why the National Football League is the best in the world at storytelling, and how NFL Films elevated and continues to elevate every run, pass, and catch into legend. To borrow a football term, NFL Films is the playbook for motorsport. Before I dive into NFL Films, though, let's talk about how the NFL itself, the National Football League, is set up to tell captivating stories. Humans love stories, and this affinity for captivating tales is what makes storytelling such a powerful sales tool. A good story gets and keeps people interested, even if they would otherwise not care at all about the subject matter. I think everyone in sales knows this. If you talk to someone that's invested, you're going to have a much easier time making your pitch. A good story, though, has two foundational elements: the narrative itself, so what's actually happening, and the way in which it is told. In other words, a good story can be really boring if it's told in a very boring way. The NFL, as explained in the YouTube video, what the NFL understands that other leagues don't, is uniquely structured to create a compelling narrative, and that will be linked as well in the show notes. So we're talking about now the first part of this 2-part model to what makes a good narrative. The league has engineered its structure to create a rhythm that feels more like a TV series than a sports competition. Every week is what you might call an episode that pushes the story forward, and it happens in the following way. Sunday delivers the drama via the games. Monday is devoted to recaps and analyses. Tuesday looks at the big picture, rankings, and season-wide narratives. Wednesday and Thursday pivots to previews for the upcoming matchups. Friday builds anticipation with predictions. And Saturday is more build-up before the cycle starts all over again. This cadence keeps fans engaged daily, even though games are only played weekly. And none of this so far even references the vast world devoted to fantasy football, which is another means of getting fans even more invested. Each result cascades into the next, creating season long and sometimes career long arcs. Add in rivalries, playoff rematches, guaranteed by the schedule and divisional formula, and you have a finely tuned storytelling engine that no other league, with its numerous and often inconsequential games, can touch. And I'm looking at you, Major League Baseball. If you live in America, Sundays in that country are largely reserved for two things: church and football. Truly, Sundays, and incidentally, Thanksgivings, spent in front of the TV or at the game are about as close to a monoculture as you can get nowadays. And that is completely deliberate. The result is that the NFL is now the US's most popular sport. And though many may see this fact as a purely US matter, make no mistake, this matters on a global scale because of how gigantic a market the country is. And consider that the Dallas Cowboys are consistently ranked as the world's most valuable sports team. And that is worth noting for a sport that most people would rightly consider is strictly limited in a meaningful way to the US. Yet, as explained in this YouTube video, which I'll link to, the NFL shouldn't dominate American culture the way it does. It has the shortest season of any major league, its biggest stars often play in small markets, and the action itself is in short bursts and constantly interrupted. Nevertheless, the NFL does dominate because it takes what could be perceived as weaknesses and turns them into strengths by channeling them all into creating a narrative. Motorsport, believe it or not, although you probably do believe this because we're all passionate fans, already has the same building blocks. There's the plot. Each race weekend is its own episode in a season-long battle for a championship, and that's most evident in F1, but it happens in other series as well. Characters, also extremely visible in F1, but in F1 also, it's not just the drivers, it's team principals and engineers who also enjoy some notoriety today. And that's thanks to the storytelling and drive to survive. You knew that was going to come up. I'll get back to that momentarily. And then there are the stakes. A single crash, penalty, or mechanical failure can swing the outcome of a race or indeed a season. So this is not just a drop ball, which causes a dead play. This is really the end of a race. The seasonal structure in motorsport is also very similar to that of American football's. Races take place periodically, usually on a Sunday for the major series. They're followed by analyses, which set up the rivalries that create the buildup and anticipation for the next round. So you can see the cycle is very similar to the NFL's. Now, to an extent, motorsport knows this and exploits this because every pre and post race YouTube video you'll see talks about some aspect of this cycle. But to me, it's not systematized. And to bring up a word I referred to in the introduction, it's just not epic. Remember, a good story is about the narrative, but it's also about how it's told. The NFL, in my view, has done so well because it has the story and it has NFL Films. To me, NFL Films is America's best kept sports secret. America itself is built on storytelling and myth making. From The American Dream to Top Gun, you can trace almost all of America's cultural hegemony to its ability to turn the most mundane occurrence into a tale worthy of the history books. NFL Films, founded in 1962 by Ed Sable, originally as Blair Motion Pictures after his daughter, was later led by his son Steve Sable, and it's the film and television production arm of the NFL, and it is very much the league's extension of and contribution to American myth-making via American football. Timing and vision played a part in what is itself an illustration of the American dream. Ed Sable started recording his son's games in 1961 and, boosted by his own self-confidence in his work and seeing an opportunity, formed Blair Motion Pictures, again named after his daughter, just a year later. And remarkably, he was able to bid on the filming rights to the 1962 NFL Championship game for a total of $5,000, which was double apparently what the other closest bid was. And this would be equivalent to about $54,000 today. I could certainly think of things to do with $54,000, but no one's broadcasting or recording a Super Bowl game for that little money. So timing played a role, but So did Vision, and we'll get to that as well. So Sable's approach to filming football was visionary, and he took a gamble. But that gamble might not have paid off were it not for the NFL's shared vision. So, like all of these stories, you have to have some lucky break or some connection that makes the original risk work. And at the time, the league's commissioner, Pete Rozelle, liked Sable's work. And by 1965, remember, this was started in 1961, Sable's company was owned by the NFL and renamed to NFL Films. The story itself is remarkable, but for a business point of view, what's crucial here is the timing and how everything lined up for NFL Films to exist right alongside the very beginnings of the NFL as we know it today. From even before the modern NFL's inception, NFL Films began capturing and, this is important, owning all of its footage and turning that into legendary moments. The compounding effect of that over decades is almost impossible to calculate, but qualitatively, it gets us to the present day where the NFL owns American Sundays. Crucially, the style of NFL films looks very similar today as it did in the 1960s. And this consistency has led to videos that are instantly recognizable if you've turned on a television in America on Sundays. And it's unique among other sports if you were just discovering NFL Films' work for the first time. You have elements such as slow motion, audio from the field via mics placed around the field, and even on players and coaches. You also have immersive ambient sound and deep narration that has gravitas. It's epic. There's no other word. It's really epic. NFL Films often overlays orchestral scores, dramatic cuts, and intimate close-ups to turn ordinary plays into mythic moments. This cinematic signature has been key in creating NFL's cultural memory. This is hard to describe, it really is. But once you see it, you are absolutely hooked. My wife, not a football fan, not familiar at all with the 90s Dallas Cowboys, still happily watched all eight episodes. Producing an 8-hour documentary on such a niche topic is so antithetical to today's dopamine-driven TikTok video entertainment cycle that it's a wonder that this even made it past the pitch phase. But if a story is good and it is well presented, people will watch. This pitch was greenlit, and NFL Films continues to exist because they are very, very good at what they do. NFL Films is so good at this, in fact, that Matt Zoller Seitz, TV critic for Salon.com, has called the company, quote, the greatest in-house PR machine in pro sports history, an outfit that could make even a tedious stalemate seem as momentous as the battle for the Alamo, end quote. So, Motorsport has the stories, it has the history, it has the drama, but it needs an NFL Films. Now here, we're going to bring up Drive to Survive. What about it? Well, Drive to Survive has been a rocket ship for motorsports, and its place in Liberty Media's marketing push for F1 will likely be a Harvard case study in marketing if it isn't already. However, Netflix are not the same as NFL Films, and any of its own seasonal recaps, which, let's be clear, is what a season of Drive to Survive is just that. It's a seasonal recap. There's nothing close to what NFL Films is doing on a storytelling level. The latter is timeless and captures almost all of the history of one of the world's biggest sports leagues, while the former style captures about 10% of F1's chronology. It's less than 10 seasons. And it possesses a style that may actually look very reminiscent of the 2010s in about 50 years. For sure, there have been some very well done videos about motorsport, some of which you'll find listed in the Voce Analytics Motorsport content directory. I'll link that in the show notes, and I highly encourage you to check it out if you're passionate about motorsports. But there exists nothing, as far as I know, as systematic and inspiring as what NFL films have done for the NFL, and will continue to do, because whereas Drive to Survive may not be around in 20 years, NFL Films will be. One media organization that also needs to be mentioned in this discussion, and that very likely will be around for decades more, is Red Bull Media House. While the content they produce is indeed very slick, and I'm sure you've seen this if you're anywhere near Instagram and YouTube, to me, it falls mostly under the category of just cool stuff caught on film, for lack of a better phrase. Could they pivot towards a more narrative style of storytelling over a period of years to cement its own motorsport myths? Absolutely. But for now, that doesn't seem to be the artistic direction. And even if it were, it would likely serve only, quote, content from the world of Red Bull, end quote. That's their words from the website. And they would rather do that, I think, which makes sense, than look at the broader motorsport ecosystem. So, what's the way forward on a motorsport equivalent to NFL Films? Interestingly, NFL Films, of course, worked with Netflix on this Dallas Cowboys documentary, and Drive to Survive is on Netflix, so there could be a connection there. But if we talk about this matter in, I suppose, a more realistic or down to earth way, it's very clear that just trying to set up a structure similar to NFL Films would be a monumental undertaking, if only because the NFL is one league, whereas motorsport encompasses endurance racing, rally racing, open wheel, and so many others. Nevertheless, we can still suggest a few possible ways forward to begin down this path of myth-making of motorsport in popular culture. Given the FIA's oversight of so many of these motorsport disciplines, something you might call an FIA Films with a mandate to preserve and manage the footage of all of its series makes sense. But at this stage, just like at Sable creating a niche that doesn't exist, or did not exist rather, in the early 1960s, almost any team in motorsport could step up and take the lead in this effort to elevate motorsport's stories. Thinking back to how the NFL turns a short season into an asset, IndyCar's calendar is also concentrated on only about 6 months of the year. And that's a series that, for all its recent momentum, still needs as much of a boost as it can get. There's another possible fortuitous connection there. Given that Fox, an NFL broadcaster, recently acquired a third of IndyCar, it would seem that the series is in a perfect position to tell its incredible history and current on-track battles in a more cinematic fashion. Could it not at least experiment in a small-scale, high-impact way, such as producing something similar to the NFL's mic'd up segments? And if you haven't seen those, have a quick YouTube search. They're a lot of fun to watch. And what if you're a small team or a smaller series? Yes, you'll still have to make an investment that may take time to pay off, because good content takes skilled people to make, and their time should be compensated. But at the moment, to me, it's almost completely blue skies for you. And if you create work that is inspiring and focuses on telling stories that anyone, not simply motorsport fans, can latch onto, you will be a long way ahead in the journey towards creating a brand for yourself and ultimately taking some of the sponsorship pressure off. And here I go back to my wife. Never, I don't think, has watched a full Cowboys game in its entirety, and certainly not back in the 90s, and yet watched an 8-hour documentary on the team. And that's the power of storytelling. Storytelling builds attention, and ownership of those stories turns that attention into fans, which in turn leads to greater financial independence. If the first step is learning to mythologize motorsport itself, the next is ensuring that the people inside it, drivers, team principals, and even small privateer squads, can channel that myth into their own brands. Every highlight, interview, or collaboration becomes an asset they control, not a favor that they owe to sponsors. And so in part 3, we'll explore how teams and drivers can apply this playbook, building recognizable identities, partnerships, and products that generate steady revenue so they no longer have to chase logos to stay on the grid. And with that, I will close out this episode of Return on Racing. As always, I want to thank you for choosing to spend your time with me here today. And if you like these insights and want more of them, I'd ask that you please consider signing up for the Return on Racing newsletter. This is a newsletter delivered weekly on Sundays to your inbox, and it's always less than 500 words. The idea is to give you quick, actionable insights that you can apply directly to your own motorsports operations. If you're interested in signing up or just finding out more about it, please navigate to the Voce Analytics website. It'll be right there on the front page. I'll also link to the sign-up area of the front page in the show notes for this episode. One other thing I want to mention is that I'm recording this in early October, and I do plan on being at the Sim Racing Expo in Dortmund at the middle of the month. So if you're around, please do find me. I've got some, I think, fun little things to give away. And if you don't mind, I'll also hand you a business card as well. So thank you so much again for joining me here on Return on Racing, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.